Growing up in a boisterous household, my brother, Brick, and I were always competing over the silliest things. In other words, we were competitive buddies. He's 2 years older, so I rarely won, but that never dampened my spirits. The competition didn't wane when we got to high school. He was the football team captain, and I was the star basketball shooter. He could lift more weights than me, and I could take him down in a wrestling match. There was one strange area where we never competed, and that was with the ladies. Of course, most of the girls we dated went to our school. Maybe it was because the senior girls he was dating weren't too keen on dating underclassmen like me. Call me strange, but I never gave a second thought to any of the girls he dated. The thought of kissing a girl he had already French kissed didn't even remotely appeal to me, even though he was my brother. Maybe it was because he was my brother that I felt this way. Call me strange, but that's just the way I was wired. During our senior year of high school, Brick was a sophomore in college majoring in business. I met Fiona in biology class when we were partnered up for a lab project. She cheerfully assigned me the task of dissecting a bullfrog, while she deftly helped us complete the organ identification portion. She was still reeling from the discovery that her boyfriend had cheated on her with a friend. By the end of the school year, Will Whitcomb and Fiona were an item, blissfully dating as exclusive friends. She was my date to the prom and helped us get the most votes for prom king and queen, but it wasn't enough to win. Most of the votes were for her. Fiona was beautiful, and I was just a regular guy. We were deeply in love, and everyone was certain we'd get married one day. After we both graduated, we were both 18 years old, and the world was ours. Our parents threw a joint graduation party for us. It was there I proposed to her, and her sweet yes lifted my heart into the clouds. We moved in together pretty quickly. It was no surprise that our chemistry spilled over from the bedroom into every other facet of our lives. We were a happy couple. Fiona's older sister became an X-ray technician at the local hospital after graduating from community college with a technical degree. Fiona, wanting to follow in her sister's footsteps, applied to the 2-year program starting next fall. Not wanting to be separated from her, I applied to the 4-year HVAC program at the same community college. My father worked in the commercial HVAC industry and loved his job, which inspired me to follow a similar path. Because I was expected to contribute what I could to my education, I took a summer job as a helper at the same company as my dad. Fiona's parents had paid for her first year, so she decided to relax and enjoy her last summer before embarking on her new life. Every night during the week, she would come to my house and wait for me to get off work. I would shower quickly, and we would watch movies or go out together. During the 3rd week of summer, on a Wednesday morning at work, we got dispatched to a call about a 65-ton air conditioner servicing a section of a department store. The sealed piston compressor coils were suspected, but Dad didn't want to conclude that the compressor needed to be replaced without confirmation from his own meter. He had just replaced the batteries in it, but accidentally left it at home. As the help, I was dispatched back home to get the meter for him. I was happy to get a break from the hot sun on the roof. When I entered the house, I quickly found the meter and was preparing to leave when I heard giggling coming from upstairs. My brother Brick was home for the summer after finishing his semester. Hoping to embarrass him by catching him with his girlfriend, I quietly snuck upstairs and listened outside his door. I wish I hadn't. I instantly recognized Fiona's voice, my fiancée. The intimate tone was unmistakable. So at that moment, I didn't know a man could be both heartbroken and furious at the same time. I was stunned into silence for a brief moment. I stealthily slipped into the room to witness the horror before my eyes. Unaware of my presence, they were in the throes of passion. Her arms and legs were wrapped around his body while he possessed her. This was a willing act. She was not being forced. While they were still consumed with lust, I grabbed her left wrist and yanked the engagement ring from her ring finger. She screamed in surprise at the sudden intrusion, and her disgust was clear in her eyes. Brick was shocked by my sudden appearance and realized the depravity of their actions. Without saying a word, I stuffed the ring into my pocket and quickly left the house. I heard them both yelling behind me, but I disregarded them. Neither of them were going to chase me out in their naked state. I quickly returned to the worksite and handed my dad the meter. He saw my bloodshot eyes and knew something was wrong. "What's the matter, son? You look troubled." I signaled him to keep it down, away from the other technicians. When I went home for the meter, I caught Fiona and Brick having sex in his room. So I saw it with my own eyes. She wasn't being forced, and it was definitely not the first time they had been together. They were very intimate. Damn. That's terrible, Will. We raised your brother to be better than that. And your mother is going to be devastated that Fiona betrayed you like this. Why don't you and your mom go home right now and get this sorted out? That's a bad idea, Dad. Right now I want to kill them both with my bare hands. I can't be around either of them for a while. I need to get my head straight. So that's probably a good idea. You just take the rest of the day off. Your mom will tell the foreman that you're sick. Don't worry about it, son. Because I had ignored multiple calls to my cell phone, first from Fiona, then from Brick, I started to receive a constant barrage of text messages begging me to call one of them to talk. That was not going to happen. At that moment, I hated them both more than I thought possible. I couldn't go home with either of them there. I called my best friend, Brent. He was at home playing online games and said I could stay at his place as long as I needed. He couldn't believe Fiona could do this to me and tried to cheer me up by getting me to play a game. I tried to replan my entire life because my original plans were just blown up. I barely slept a wink that night as my brain was working overtime trying to process this double betrayal. The next morning, after showering, I put on the only set of clothes I had brought with me, ate breakfast at IHOP, and returned to work on time. Will, your dad was glad to see you come to work today. Everyone at home is worried about you, my father stated. If you don't mind, I don't want to talk about it. Can I just do my job and get through the day? Of course, son, I respect that, but sooner or later you'll have to face life. You can't run from it, he advised. He was right. I knew he was right, but I was still so angry that if I saw Brick right now I would choke the life out of him. I took on every demanding challenge of the day, doing all the heavy lifting without being asked. I needed to exercise some demons and exhaustion helped. We struggled the air handling unit out of its casing and pulled it to the side of the roof where the crane could lift it up and place it in the back of the work truck. So this was a fortunate twist for me. The air handling unit would have to be ruined, and the customer was willing to pay extra to get it done as soon as possible. So as the lowest man on the totem pole, that meant that I would drive 6 hours to the nearest repair shop, where I would wait in their unloading bay the next morning to offload it. So that meant I would have to sleep overnight away from home. That was perfectly fine with me. At least I got paid for food in a hotel room. I kept my phone charged but turned off. I didn't want to talk to anyone about my failed love life. My mood wasn't the best. Luckily for the customer, the repair center happened to have a refurbished compressor in their shop that was ready to go. We just needed to swap out the bad compressor with the refurbished one. I wrote them a purchase order to cover the swap fees, and I was on my way by 9 the next morning. I called ahead to give them my ETA so they could schedule crane maintenance. By mid-afternoon, my truck was freed from the weight of the compressor as it flew into the air. I helped struggle the repaired unit back into its casing while the mechanics fitted new gaskets and attached the service valve connections. After a quick leak check, the vacuum pump was loosened on the system to pull out all of the non-condensable vapors overnight. We made it back home by 10 p.m. After showering, I locked my bedroom door and watched TV in my room until I fell asleep. Brick knocked on my door and called out, but I disregarded him. I could hear my dad telling him to leave. Exhaustion from both physical and emotional labor allowed me to sleep until 9 a.m. on Saturday. The house was eerily quiet for Saturday. After getting dressed, I opened my bedroom door and heard whispering coming from downstairs. I was sure they had heard me enter the bathroom and flush the toilet. I descended the stairs to be surprised by a room full of people. So in addition to my family, Fiona was there with her parents, the pastor from our church, and my 3 best friends. So I knew a bad play was about to begin. Fiona was sober enough to avoid eye contact and remained motionless. My dad started, "Will, I hate to confront you like this, but everyone thought it was best to air everything out so we could get it resolved and put it behind us." "Yes, honey," my mom interjected. "We all know about the unfortunate scene that you witnessed, and your brother and Fiona have come to apologize." Brick started, "I'm sorry, Will, that you caught us together. We just happened to be together. It just happened. You know, one thing leads to another. In a moment of weakness, I went there with Fiona. It wasn't her fault. I take all the blame. You can hate me as much as you want, but Fiona is a good girl and you need to forgive her and move on from this. If 2 people were ever meant to be together, it's you 2. My silence was making the whole group nervous. My eyes burned into Fiona until she finally spoke. It meant nothing, Will, I swear. I don't know what came over me to allow myself to do that to him. It was a one-time thing, in case you were wondering, and it will never happen again. I would rather die than see that look on your face one more time. I apologize to you before God and everyone here witnessing this. Please forgive me, and let me get my ring back. Saying yes to you was the proudest day of my life, and saying I do next to you would make me the happiest girl alive. Her parents, who had always been kind to me, smiled nervously in support of their daughter but wisely remained silent to defend their daughter's recent behavior. You swear it meant nothing? It meant nothing to me, what I did with your brother. How shameful. You admit that you cast aside your future husband for a meaningless fling? Does that make me feel any better? She abruptly went silent again. Reverend Jenkins felt it was his turn to chime in to try and break down my wall. I'm not going to shove a mandate down your throat to forgive her right now, Will. So you're familiar with the teachings of the Bible. But if you'll allow me, I'd like to remind you during this tumultuous and conflicting time in your life about an oft-pioneered quote by an 18th century poet, Willander Pope, "To err is human, to forgive divine." We are all human, Will, even you. The Bible reminds us that none of us are righteous, not one. Everyone here loves you and is hurting for your heart right now. All of us know that it will take time, but hopefully you will accept the 2 heartfelt apologies given to you this morning and grow from this experience and not let it ruin you. Easier said than done, Reverend. Fiona was crying because I wouldn't embrace her into my arms or offer forgiveness after her pleas for it. Brent, my best friend, grinned at me. Hey buddy, we know this is rough, but you're even rougher. You're too strong to let this bring you down. Fiona is great, we all know that. Hey, everybody makes mistakes, right? How about we go play some pool so you can clear your head? We can even let you win to change things up, he said humorously. My other 2 friends chuckled along. Everyone was standing there waiting for me to say something. I wasn't ready to say what they all wanted to hear. I appreciate what everyone is trying to do, but I'm not ready to work all of this out right now. I need more time and space to process everything, but I can't promise anyone what the outcome will be. I'll embarrass myself horribly if I say what I'm thinking right now, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Fiona, I want you to leave the house key that I gave you here so you can stop by any time. I need you to stay away from me for a while until I can sort out my feelings. But how can we get through this if you're not there to help me, Will? I love you and only you, and I want to be with you forever. I closed my eyes and sighed as her words were like a dagger piercing my heart. I looked directly at her parents. She doesn't seem to be hearing me. Can you 2 keep her away from me for a while? I mean, no contact. I need this or I might explode. They both nodded silently in agreement. Sorry guys, I said to my 3 friends. I don't have the time to play pool right now. I have too much on my mind. I'm going for a walk. Brick, if you know what's good for you, never speak to me again, ever. If you do, I promise we will both be in the hospital. With that, I walked out and took a circuit around the neighborhood to burn away the hatred I was feeling for Brick and Fiona. I thought I had acted pretty well in that unscheduled conference with my heart on fire. My dad must have had a heart-to-heart with Brick, because he always made himself scarce whenever I was around. I tried to limit my time at home to avoid interacting with him, and even when I was there, I kept myself locked in my room. That didn't stop my parents from approaching me nearly every day at separate times to have a conversation about my feelings for Fiona and Brick. I tried to be polite with them, but in reality, I was distracted and thinking about other things instead of listening to them dictate what I should think, feel, say, and do. My friends were in Fiona's court as well because they would hit me with the forgive and forget advice. So much so that I began hanging out with them less and less. I continued to work with my dad, who respected my wishes at the worksite and didn't mention the topic anymore, which I appreciated. Then the nuclear bomb was dropped. Again, on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks later, I was once again surprised by those same people, except our pastor was not present for this meeting for some reason. Fiona was wearing a cute flowy sundress and beaming with happiness at me. Well, I have amazing news, she excitedly announced as she handed me the pregnancy test. You're going to be a dad. So I'm pregnant? She squealed. I looked at her parents with a pained expression. We took her to the doctor to get a blood test to confirm. It's true, Fiona is pregnant, her mother stated weakly. They didn't seem any happier than I was at that moment. I look at Fiona. When can you get that test done? What test, Will? What are you talking about? I confirmed it both ways, you idiot. I'm definitely pregnant. I'm talking about a prenatal paternity test, a special DNA test to determine who the father of your child is. Fiona angrily dropped the saccharine sweet tone and screamed in fury, "I'm sick and tired of your crap, Will. Yes, I made a mistake one time. That doesn't mean the baby isn't yours. If you're asking me, it's a low blow, and I'm offended that you're trying to paint me as some kind of slut who sleeps with anyone. Get over it, baby. This is good for us. We can still get married and bring our love child into our loving home. This is what we always talked about, you and I, in love and raising a family together. We were meant to be together, can't you see that?" Her impassioned plea fell on deaf ears. "You said it was a one-time thing. Excuse my bluntness, but I don't believe you. What I saw you doing with him was much different than our first time together. But even if that were true, that just tells me that any sweet-talking devil could talk you into bed. So I'll ask again, when can you get the test done?" Her mother jumped into the conversation. "I don't like the way you're talking to my daughter, young man. I don't know why, but Fiona still loves you more than life itself. I was expecting you to pull something like this, so I did some research. The only kind of prenatal DNA test that I'll allow my baby to have is a non-invasive prenatal paternity test, which is much more expensive than an amniocentesis, which I forbid. The non-invasive test costs approximately $1,350 to $1,750, depending on how quickly you want the results. Our health insurance won't cover that expense. We discussed this and felt that that money would be better spent on her and the baby's care than wasted on proving it's your child. All you have to do is wait until the baby is born, and we can do a simpler, much less expensive test if you really want to do it after you see and hold your child. This test won't cost you a dime. I'll pay for it. I'll write you a check right now, or bring you cash after I go to the bank. It seems that everyone believes it's mine, but I need to know for sure to retain my sanity. This whole situation is driving me crazy. My dad spoke up on my behalf. I can vouch for my son. If he says he'll pay, he'll pay. In any case, I'll back him up. You won't have to pay any expenses." Fiona and her family seemed deeply disappointed that I insisted on a test. "We'll let you know when the test will be done, Will. They'll need a cheek swab from you to determine the results." I thought it was strange that no one suggested testing Brick at the same time. For them, it was a slam dunk. I nodded. "I'll be there anytime. Just give me a day's notice so I can arrange to take a day off if needed. I still need time, Fiona. I understand you're excited. Maybe I can stop by after the results are in. So, the sooner the better." She perked up at hearing me say something positive. "I promise, I'll get the test done as soon as possible, baby. I'm in total agreement with you. The sooner the better so we can get back to where we belong." On Monday evening, I received a text from Fiona stating that the test would be done on Tuesday morning at 10:30 with a location. I met them there and followed the steps. I paid for the entire test with my debit card as promised. We were informed that the official results would be in within 7 days. Brick must have felt relieved that the attention had moved away from him and shifted heavily to me. He decided it was safe to approach me. "Thanks, bro, for giving me a nephew. I don't care if it's a boy or girl. I'm going to spoil it rotten," he quipped. Again, I disregarded his comment and simply walked away. If he thought I was over his betrayal, he was sorely mistaken. A week later, the results were sent overnight to me in a FedEx envelope. Brick and my parents gathered around me to learn the truth that was officially authenticated. "Well, what does it say?" my mother asked impatiently. "In a nutshell, Mom, after reading it twice, it says, Will Whitcomb, you are not the father. Want to guess who the baby's father is? No further testing is needed. My guess is that the answer to the question is whether he is a condom. Brick, you are dead to me, and the next time you see my former betrothed, the mother of your love child, you can tell her she's dead to me too. I never want to see or speak to any of you again for as long as I live. Do you understand me? For as long as I live." "Will," my dad commanded, "I understand that you're upset, and rightfully so. But as long as you live under my roof, this kind of language will not be tolerated, understand?" "Crystal. Sorry, I have a date. I felt resentful that my brother could seduce and impregnate my fiancée, and that was okay with my parents, but if I called them out for their treachery, it was unacceptable to my parents. I needed to get out of there. I went out, got some fast food, and went to see a movie to kill some time. I turned off my phone to avoid unwanted conversations. It was 10:30 p.m. when I returned home. Fiona's car was there. I had a bad feeling about what awaited me inside. "So where have you been?" my mother asked. "I went out to eat and then went to see a movie." "Why?" "We've been waiting for you for hours, Will. Sit down, we need to talk." There was a space next to Fiona. I disregarded the arrangement and moved to a single chair on the opposite side of the room. Angrily, she continued, "Will, after how you left earlier, I figured you hadn't contacted Fiona about the DNA test results, so I called her and gave her the information. She and her parents came here to discuss your next steps in your relationship with Fiona now that the baby is on the way." I looked at Fiona in disbelief. "You actually think I'm going to marry you and raise the child with another man after you cheated on me? Do you love me, Will? Only me. Technically, since we weren't officially married yet, you didn't actually cheat on me. What happened between you and your brother happened before we were engaged, and our child, it has your family's genes, so of course it will look like you." I raised my eyebrows in astonishment. My mom chimed in, "Honey, we realize this isn't an ideal situation. But technically, she's right, and her child is our family. Brick has completed 2 years of his 4-year program. It would be a shame if he had to drop out to take care of this child. He's already halfway through his program. And don't you dare say you don't love her. The love you two have for each other can't be shut off that quickly. I don't you see why it's completely logical that you should just leave this unfortunate situation behind and marry her." "Unfortunate situation? What about my education, Mom? I was going to go to college in the fall. Doesn't that count for anything?" "Sure, that's a consideration, honey, but your goal wasn't to get a 4-year degree. Your dad says you can get into the apprenticeship program where he works instead and work part-time. Yes, it will take longer to achieve that by starting out as an apprentice instead of having a 2-year degree from community college, but it will be a lot easier for you to shoulder the burdens of the family under those circumstances than Brick. But think about it, Will. It would be better for everyone. Doesn't that make sense?" I could barely believe my ears. "You're asking me to marry a known adulterer because my wife-to-be and then raise another man's child as my own, just to make my brother's life easier. Are you saying that his life is more important than mine?" "Of course not," Dad interjected. "You're both equally important to us, and we love you both the same. Everyone here, including your brother, believes that you and Fiona belong together. When the baby comes, he'll be the greatest uncle that child could ever imagine, and he'll contribute financially what he can to help with the baby's expenses. Love and hate are 2 sides of the same coin. Whatever you're calling what you're feeling right now, love or hate, it's still a strong emotion that you have for her. No one here is going to force you to do anything, especially your father. I love you, Will, and as a father, I want what's best for both of my sons, not just one." All eyes were on me, and I don't think they liked the look on my face. After all that I know about Fiona, her actions should have consequences. I'm not in love with her anymore. She and my brother betrayed me in the worst possible way. I'm not interested in marrying Fiona, nor will I raise another man's child with her. That will never happen. Everyone saw the determination in my eyes and knew I meant it. Fiona was crying at my blunt rejection. My dad added his sage wisdom, "Will, if you refuse, then he has no choice. Brick, you have to step up and marry her if she'll take you so you can raise and support the child. I don't see how you can go to college full-time and do that. I'm sorry, son. Without Will's cooperation, I don't see any other way." I could tell that Brick was extremely upset with this turn of events. His hateful stare at me was palpable. "Brick, I know your life is never going to be the same, but we, the Whitcomb family, never shirk our responsibilities. Your mom and I raised you better than that. When Will leaves to go to college and Nakasha Nicole, the helper job he was doing will be yours. You can work with me and move up. It won't provide the kind of income that you could have with a college degree, but you can make it work if you continue to live here with your new wife in the spare room for a while. It might be cramped there with the baby, but we'll figure something out. So you're going to let them live here, in the same house I live in, while I'm going to college. When I come home from school, I'll see the backstabbers every day as a reminder of what they did to me. I don't know if I can handle that constantly. I don't see you having a say in this matter, Will. Your mom and I own this house, and we love you and Brick equally. We're not going to turn our backs on him even after everything that happened." Frustrated, I said, "I'm tired." "Good night," I said. I didn't want to be around those backstabbers for another minute. The next morning, early, I called in sick. I left the house like a man on a mission. I went to 3 local storage facilities and secured the best deal I could find. The monthly fee would be automatically deducted from my checking account. Then, I went to the local recruiting center and told everyone that I would sign with the first place that could get me out of this town soonest. The Navy was on it, and the process started immediately. They sent me to an in-processing station where I took the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery (AICHI) test and passed the medical exam (MEPS). I signed on the dotted line and was informed that I would be shipped to boot camp in 2 days. I felt a tremendous sense of relief once it was all done. I couldn't handle living in the same house with the two betrayers, especially if they were going to be my relatives and living in the same house. I rented a small U-Haul and drove back home. It was a house that I would never call home again, and that was a necessity for me. My mom and dad were at work. Dad had called and texted asking why I called in sick. I never answered. Of course, Brick and Fiona were there, once again having sex in his room. Apparently, they had decided to make the most of their situation. I never wanted to see or speak to any of them again. I packed half of my room and loaded into the U-Haul before he came out to see what was going on in my room. He asked me what I was doing, but I simply ignored him, as if he didn't exist. I continued packing all of the belongings from my bedroom, clothes and everything else that belonged to me, and loaded it all in the U-Haul. He yelled at me that he was calling my parents. Fiona joined in on the fray and tried to talk to me, but she received the same complete silence. After the U-Haul was loaded, I drove to the storage facility and carefully placed my entire life's collection neatly inside. My phone was ringing by this time, but I chose not to answer. Instead, I checked into a budget motel and packed a small suitcase to take with me to boot camp. I thought about stopping by the house that night, but decided that my emotions were still too raw. I would say goodbye tomorrow evening and then be gone into the sunset to begin a new adventure in my life. I slept much better that night than I thought I would. I believe it was because I was regaining control of my life in deciding my own fate instead of allowing others to choose for me. I spent the next day contacting some of my other friends and giving them the lowdown on my situation. So they had heard rumors but nothing for sure. I informed them directly of what Fiona and Brick had done. They all wished me luck. That evening, my mom was crying as she hugged me, saying that she was worried sick because she thought something terrible had happened to me. Brick and Fiona entered the room when they heard the commotion. "Mom, tell those two to get out of the room now," I said angrily. My dad considered, "They're not going to do that. Brick lives here and she's visiting her new fiancé, so she's welcome too. But look at your room, you don't live here anymore. What's going on, Will?" he asked. "Fine. If they stay, I'll go. I hate them both and they're both dead to me." You can't tell me what to do in my own house, son. Your brother lives here, so they can stay." Dad is absolutely right. So, I'll go. I was going to tell you all the details, but I don't want to do it in the same room with the dead. Here's the key to the family car that I've been driving. I handed the keys to my mom. I joined the Navy. Maybe in 4 years, I'll see you both again. I rushed out of the house and ran quickly out of sight while my mom cried and called out for me. I didn't want to turn around and let my mom see me cry, too. I thought about calling an Uber, but decided it was a nice evening and a walk would do me good. I turned off my phone and began a new chapter in my life. I spent the next 10 weeks in boot camp at the Great Lakes Naval Base in Illinois. I didn't bother calling mom or dad to give them any details about my graduation. I marched into the ceremony with approximately 800 of my new shipmates to thunderous applause. And I was proud to be there. After the ceremony, parents, wives, girlfriends, and other significant others who were watching the ceremony from the bleachers in the training hall rushed to greet the new sailors. I was surprised to see my parents there. Maybe they had called themselves. "What are you two doing here?" I asked as my mom hugged and kissed me. My dad gave me a firm handshake of approval for the young man I was becoming. Then I saw them. Brick and Fiona came up to greet me. "What in the hell are they doing here?" I spat out. Mom, in her conciliatory tone, explained, "They're married now. Isn't that great? And you'll be the greatest uncle in the world to their baby when it's born, right?" My pained expression gave away my reaction. "Sorry, Mom. I didn't have time to use the bathroom before graduation started, and I'm about to lose it. Let me see if I can find a bathroom quickly." I took off and headed towards an area of the base that was off limits to everyone except those who were in Sting. Maybe they would get the message now. They drove all this way to exchange 2 sentences. Thankfully, my phone was back in my rack. I wasn't expecting any calls. Most of the graduates got a few days off to visit their families before being shipped to their next duty station. I hadn't requested any such time off. I stayed on base for 3 days before shipping out to school. My SVB scores qualified me for HVAC training, which is exactly what I wanted. We started with the basics, and after several months I was qualified to be a maintenance machinist for large variable speed centrifugal and screw chillers used to cool ships and submarines. I spent the remainder of my 4-year Navy service on an aircraft carrier. I was amazed by its size. It was like a floating city. I decided against re-enlisting and got out of the service with a lot of training and experience. York, Train, and Carrier were the 3 primary brands of centrifugal and screw chillers that I had experience maintaining. Returning home, York was a subsidiary of Johnson Controls. I applied and was hired as a service maintenance technician. I had to adjust a few things, but the science is the same, whether on a ship or in a building. I moved into an apartment and retrieved everything from storage. Looking at all my belongings made me miss home a little bit, so I decided to contact my parents. I met them at a restaurant. "Oh, Will, you've grown up so much. I can't believe how handsome my boy is. Let me get a good look at you," my mother praised. "I'm 22, Mom, so I have grown a bit." "Hi, Dad. I'm a certified service technician at Johnson Controls, mostly working out of the service shop on centrifugal and screw chillers, which is a little different from the back and forth refrigeration units you do in your work. I suspect we won't be crossing paths often, but we might occasionally run into each other at one of the suppliers." "Wow, Johnson Controls, huh? Yeah, they work on big machines. That's fantastic. I'm proud of you, son. That gives me an idea. Now that you work there, Brick can apply for a job as an apprentice there, and I bet he'd get in if you put in a good word. As you know, the pay there is better than at our company, and Brick can use every extra dollar he can get for him, Fiona, and their family. I wish you could get over your future from your brother and Fiona. They're both eager to see you again, and are extremely disappointed that you asked them to stay away," my father informed me. "So no, thanks, Dad. That ship has sailed. If he applies for a job where I work, I'll do everything I can to keep him blacklisted. Let's change the subject, Dad. I never want to hear anything about either of them. I can't say that strongly enough. They're both dead to me. I will never intentionally be in the same room with them again." Okay, I won't push it, Will, but you should know that they moved their family into their own house 6 months ago, so you can stop by the old place anytime and not worry about running into them. Good. I'll always call ahead to make sure. Their disdainful look at my stubbornness spoke volumes. I told them about my life in the Navy, explaining that I now had the educational background to service most HVAC products. My dad expressed pride in my accomplishments. I shared some of my experiences in the countries and ports I visited around the globe. "Why, son? Why did you uproot yourself and leave us behind?" "You know why. You told me that as long as I lived under your roof, I would have to put up with seeing them every day. So I fixed it so I no longer lived under your roof." He just shook his head. I met Joanne Lindley through a coworker, Kyle Laughlin, who after building a strong friendship, asked me to be a groomsman in his wedding. She was a wedding planner director. It was a profession she had taken over from her mother. I could barely take my eyes off her during the rehearsal. She and I were bantering and joking every spare minute she had. It seemed to be mutual attraction. We had dinner together at the rehearsal, which started our dating life. Dating her was sometimes difficult. She worked odd hours some evenings as she met with her clients and potential clients. Spring and summer were her busiest times. She rarely had weekends off, and on wedding days, she stayed with her clients throughout the event until the DJ packed up. But we made it work. A year later, I couldn't think of any reason to keep my life on hold any longer. When Joanne was 23, and I was 24, I proposed. Her mother retired from the business to direct her daughter's wedding. My parents loved her. Joanne was so easygoing that she could fit in anywhere she went. I was so proud of her. On our wedding day, I made sure my parents were more than aware that they were not to try and sneak my brother and his wife into our wedding or reception. Although Joanne had seen photos my parents had shown her, she had never met them. Even though I had requested it, my family hadn't cut ties with them, so I explained to Joanne that I would never be in the same place as him, and if my parents wanted to invite us both, they should just invite my brother because I was issuing the ultimatum. Joanne understood that I always avoided any event I knew Brick would attend. She quickly realized this topic was a sensitive one for me and avoided making me uncomfortable by not mentioning them in conversation. Joanne had 2 brothers she was very close to, and I got along with them great. 18 months later, Indra Renee Whitcomb, a brown-haired baby girl, was born, a beloved child. I heard my brother had 3 children, but my parents acted like this was their first grandchild, and we cherish that. Of course, Joanne's mother doted on Indra as well. I wouldn't call her daddy's girl or mommy's girl. As she grew up, she loved us both equally, and Joanne and I gave her as much of our time as we could. We visited both sets of grandparents regularly, where we constantly took tons of photos. We were thrilled to have a close relationship on both sides of our family. Joanne was treated like a daughter by my parents. Sometime after our 8th wedding anniversary, Kyle Laughlin introduced Joanne to his cousin to direct her wedding. The next day, when he was at the rehearsal, he ran into me during lunch while I was working on a job. "Hey Will, how are you doing?" Kyle began asking. "To be honest, not too great. Looks like I'm going to have to reclaim about 700 pounds of refrigerant from this chiller to repair all of the leaks underneath that I just discovered. That's going to be a real pain in the neck." "I feel your pain, bro. I had to replace the motor bearings on a 900 HP open drive motor, but that's nothing compared to what you're facing. But that's not why I came to see you," he noted. "Yeah, what's up?" "What I have to tell you isn't going to be easy, but I wanted to know if I were you, so I hope you don't shoot the messenger." "What are you talking about, Kyle?" "Well, I think Joanne is the greatest. That's why I introduced her to my cousin, Ashley, for her wedding." "Yeah, she mentioned she's working that one lately. We appreciate your support, and thanks for the referral." "I'm afraid you won't be so appreciative when I tell you what I think you should know." "Oh, what's that, Kyle?" "Well, yesterday I went to the rehearsal for my cousin's wedding and dinner afterward. Joanne announced to everyone that she'd hired an assistant, Steve Baker, and introduced him to everyone, saying he would be shadowing her to learn the basics. Nothing too out of the ordinary, right?" "Nothing too out of the ordinary, except that she never told me she hired an assistant, and she's never mentioned anyone with that name to me." "I'm sorry, Will, but there's more. I don't think she recognized me because it's been a while since I've been around her, as she never reacts to my presence. Anyway, after the rehearsal ended and everyone gathered for the rehearsal dinner, the caterer asked if I knew where the power panel was because the outlet wasn't working and they had a couple of warming lamps for the specialty dishes. I looked around for Joanne or Steve but didn't see either of them. When I inquired, someone told me they saw them going into the back room to check something out. Well, I went through the building to the back room, which wasn't locked. As I entered, it was pitch black, but I could see a small light in the corner. As I approached, I was shocked to see Joanne kneeling down, and she was blowing Steve. He was using the light from his phone to illuminate their activity. I couldn't tell if he was recording the blowjob. I was too shocked. I took my phone out and recorded about 90 seconds of her blowing him. My phone has excellent low-light capabilities. Sorry, buddy, I figured you would want to know. I hope you would reciprocate if the shoe were on the other foot." Damn. Are you sure that was her, Kyle? Are you absolutely sure that was her?" "I'm sorry, buddy, that was her, I'm certain. I wasn't recording the video for myself, Will. I recorded it for you. I'll transfer the video to your phone and then delete it from mine. Looking at what I witnessed, I don't believe it was the first time they had been together." "I hate that you had to witness that, Kyle, but I am grateful you came to me to tell me this instead of letting it continue unchecked. Thanks, buddy, for your discretion." That night, Joanne called me at 10 p.m. after she got home. "Where are you and Indra? It's late, she should be in bed." "She's sleeping over at her mom's house. I'm at a hotel." "Wait, what? What's going on, Will? Why are you at a hotel? You're not making any sense." "I'm going to answer your question with a question. Who is Steve Baker?" "Who? Steve who? I don't know what you're talking about anymore." "I'm talking about a guy named Steve Baker who you didn't hire as an assistant." "Oh, you mean at work? That Steve Baker? No, silly, he's not my assistant. He's just one of the florists I refer clients to, and we co-host a lot of weddings together." "I see. And does his floral sales job include blowing you?" "What? How dare you? You're crazy, Will. Where is all of this coming from?" "I'm sending you a short video, Joanne. Let me know when you're finished watching it." 2 minutes later, how? Where? Oh my God, where did you get this? It's okay, Joanne. I'm getting a divorce. After what Fiona did to me, you know exactly how I feel about cheating. I'll be fair, we'll split everything down the middle. If you object to this, to anything, especially Indra's custody, which we will share, I will send a copy of the video to all your potential clients and all of our family and friends. Bye, Joanne, and I ended the call. She knew better than to challenge my resolve. 8 years of marriage down the drain. We sold the house and split the proceeds. She didn't argue with me about anything. It was a peaceful divorce. I never asked her any further questions about her extramarital affair or if she had others. It wouldn't help. We did a great job co-parenting Indra. As far as I know, she didn't trash me behind my back. From the age of 6.5, Indra was privy to the best of both of us. I never bad-mouthed her mom to her, but I did share a few highlights with friends and family. I couldn't just push Joanne out of my life because I had a brother and an ex-fiancée. She and I would see each other for our weekly exchange with Indra, and for Indra's birthdays and holidays. Joanne tried to win me back several times, but each attempt was met with a firm no. She remained close to my parents because their grandparent status never changed. I had no issue with that. Indra went to therapy once a week for 2 years at my insistence. I didn't want her to go through our divorce without having someone qualified to give her tools to cope with her emotions. She did exceptionally well in elementary school and graduated high school with honors. As a graduation gift, I bought her a nice, safe, slightly used car for her to drive. Joanne and I always split every cost associated with her upbringing, but the car was mine, and I wanted it that way. So the summer before she went to college, I sat down with Indra and told her that she was old enough to know the specific reason for my divorce from her mother. Of course, I didn't give her the specific details, but explained that her mom had been caught cheating on me with another man, and I couldn't live with her after that. Indra explained that her mom had painted a blatant version of our marriage breakdown, saying that we simply wanted different things. She accepted my version as truth. As I was talking about it, I explained that, for very similar circumstances, that was why I had cut off ties with my brother's family. He and his wife had both betrayed my trust in such an unforgivable manner that I could never get over it. She accepted it all, and understood the reasons behind my decisions. When Indra started college, Kyle introduced me to his sister-in-law, Irina McMasters, who had been widowed 2 years earlier from cancer. Her daughter, Amber, was the same age as Indra and was also attending college. Irina and I were drawn to each other and connected on a mysterious level. Having been burned twice, I had no interest in pursuing marriage relationships, and she was not ready to change names. She still missed her soulmate. We met each other's needs appropriately and were living a very fulfilling life together. She moved in with me a year later, and we managed this blended family situation to the best of our abilities. Indra and Amber graduated from college the same year, each with 4-year degrees, but from different universities. Indra met the love of her life during her 3rd year of college. Barry Dotson was a pretty decent guy who convinced me that he truly loved Indra and was intelligent. We disagreed on a few major political issues, but no one is perfect. Indra was delighted to accept his proposal, and they were getting married in 9 months. Joanne and I met with them to discuss budgets and expectations. When we settled on a number, Joanne and I agreed to split the cost. The number was within her maximum, and she couldn't spend another dime. I could easily afford the wedding budget on my own, but she wanted to pay half, probably for wedding control. Because wedding details were usually in the mother's domain, I let them work it out. Indra asked me to give her a list of people who were likely to receive wedding invitations. She and her mother had agreed on their names and wanted to add anyone else I wanted to the list, as long as it was within their budget. I told her I would have to think about it and asked her to provide me with a copy of the list they had already compiled so I could see which of my friends were not on the list to save time. She brought it to me, and I reviewed it 2 days later. I was shocked. Standing out on the list were the names of Brick and Fiona Whitcomb and their 3 children, Donna, Clay, and Lisa. For wedding party roles, they had Clay as a groomsman and Lisa as a flower girl. I knew that Joanne I had both made it clear to Indra how I felt about my brother and his family. This wasn't a random mistake. I met with Indra and Barry to have a small conversation. Indra, you know how I feel about my brother and his family, and you know why. I've always been very clear about them. Now I see you've invited them all to your wedding and plan to have 2 of their children in the wedding party. What's going on? Dad, I love you to pieces. Barry and I both love you, but I'm naturally curious about them, what they are like, and why you hate them so much. I want to see them for myself and make up my own mind. I know this might upset you, Dad, but I've been seeing them for the last 4 years and have built a relationship with them that you have no idea about. I never mentioned it before, because I didn't want to upset you. Upset me? You've been secretly building a relationship with them knowing how I feel about them. Yes, it was a secret between us, knowing you would object. They are actually amazing people. You feel compelled to invite and include them in your wedding, because you think it will be the perfect opportunity to reunite with a large part of your family that's been missing from your life for too long. You're grown up now, and you can make your own decisions and invite anyone you want to your wedding. Princess, you are absolutely correct. But, as you said, you know my feelings about them, and that's why you all conspired to keep me in the dark until nearly the wedding. I'm surprised you didn't spring this on me at the wedding. We talked about it and thought hard about it, but felt that springing it on you would just cause you to make a scene and ruin your wedding, so we decided to tell you in advance so you could learn to accept it. They promised they wouldn't cause any problems. They miss you and want to see you again. I want you to do this for me, Dad. This is my wedding. Does your mom know about this? She knows how I feel about them. Why didn't she say anything to you? Of course she knows, Dad. Mom, she, and Grandpa, they're the ones who suggested we all get together and mend the family ties like they used to be. You dare judge me. Imagine if you had a sister, and she stole Barry from you right before your wedding, and she showed up pregnant with his child. How much would you love your sister under those circumstances? Honey, I've always known your boundaries, and if my brother and his family are invited, maybe you should reconsider paying for your portion of the wedding. Oh, really? She spat out in anger. Dad, it's time to let go of the past. It's long over. It's ridiculous that anyone holds on to grudges that long. It's not good for your health. Let it go, once and for all. Welcome them to my wedding and mend your broken family. Indra, honey, I know you love me, but it's not your decision. You can want that for me as much as you like, but it will never make me want it. You've never broken a promise to me, Dad, not once that I can recall in my whole life. But you promised me that you would pay half. Are you going to go back on your word just because your brother-in-law and his family are going to be at my wedding? So your word means something? Dad, I promised them they would be invited to my wedding, and that Clay could be a groomsman, and Lisa would be our flower girl. She knew she had me there. I was always a man of my word, and she knew it. I sighed. You're right, honey. Forgive my shortcomings. Emotions have gotten the better of me. Thanks for reminding me that I'm a man of my word. I will keep my promise to you and pay half of the wedding expenses, because my word is my bond. Also, I agree with you. You promised them, you did, and just like me, you need to keep your promises. Indra threw her arms around my neck in delight, but I kept going. While we're on the topic of keeping my promises, I've long promised that I would never be in the same room as them. I'm not a liar, I keep my promises. When you invite them all, you inadvertently disinvite me. You know my feelings towards them, yet you sneaked behind my back and want to bring them to your wedding. That's your prerogative, honey, and I respect that. I can accept that you want a relationship with them all, and I will never ask you to ignore them like I have, because they didn't betray you. So the only people they betrayed were your father. However, I will not walk you down the aisle because I will not be there. Maybe your wonderful uncle can take that honor. AICHI, no, you can't do that. Don't you dare threaten me with that, Dad. If you're not at my wedding and walking me down the aisle with them, I will never speak to you again. She raged. Indra, honey, you have no idea how heartbroken I am hearing you say that. That old backstabbing brother and his cheating whore wife betrayal is now complete. They've incited you to alienate me and prevent me from being at your wedding. No, Dad, that's not what I want. I want you to be at my wedding, and I want you to be happy being there with them. You do? Yes. I want that, don't I? Yes. I want a brother who didn't betray and backstab me. I want a fiancé who didn't cheat on me and sabotage my family. I want parents who respect and honor my wishes. I want a wife, your mom, who didn't cheat on me. I want all of that, but I never had any of it. Honey, because you promised them all, you might as well just break your word and only betray one person, me, instead of breaking your word to everyone in the family. That's the logical and prudent thing to do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go have a drink. The pain of missing your wedding is unbearable. I wanted to be alone to deal with my misery. I didn't get what I wanted. My parents were angry, my ex-wife Joanne was angry, and even my girlfriend Irina and her daughter Amber. were doing their best to convince me to change my mind and let bygones be bygones. Each of them insisted that I reconsider and apologize to Indra and mend fences with my estranged brother. Irina informed me that if I didn't attend the wedding and walk Indra down the aisle, I would be destroying my relationship with my daughter. I had stopped talking to them, and I was now ignoring their calls. I basically isolated myself from my ex-wife, Indra, my parents, and many of my good friends and family members. The atmosphere in my house was cold and icy. We were at a stalemate. Although I couldn't imagine it would happen, I was determined, angry, and sad all at the same time. I spent a lot of time thinking about what was being threatened. Was it my pride or my relationship with my daughter? I truly loved Indra with all my heart. Then, I asked myself the question, who was really being punished by my demands? I had to admit I was being very stubborn. Indra never informed me that Brick and his family were not invited, which meant she had done exactly what I had advised her to do, kept her promises to others, and broken her promise to me. As Spock once quoted Charles Dickens, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." I was desperate. On a Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks before the wedding, my doorbell rang. Amber was out with friends, so it couldn't be anyone for her. Irina yelled that she was busy and told me to see who was at the door. Then my stomach flipped, wondering if I would have to defend myself again from a well-meaning interloper. I finally managed to get up from my chair and see who it was. "Indra," I mumbled in shock as I saw the scene before me. Dad, can we come in?" Indra was in a gorgeous wedding gown with a stunning bridal train, beaming with happiness. Standing next to her was Barry Dotson, her fiancé, in a very dapper tuxedo. Another unfamiliar man in a plain, dark suit carrying a Bible stood directly behind the overdressed pair. "Of course, honey. Come on in. You look magnificent in that gown. You're beautiful, it takes my breath away," I greeted. "Thanks, Dad. I hope you approve." "And you too, Barry. You look sharp." "So thank you, sir," he replied. "Welcome to our humble abode, sir. I'm Will Whitcomb. And you are?" "Reverend Richard Walters. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm here at the request of this fine couple." "So what's going on, honey? I mean, I'm not complaining at all. You look stunning. Did you come here so I could see you in your full bridal glory before the wedding?" "No, Dad. Barry and I are getting married right here, today, in your backyard. We brought the Reverend, and the photographer will be here in 15 minutes. We have to time things so they can set up." "What? But why? I mean..." "Barry convinced me, Dad. You remind me that you've always been an amazing father and a respectable man since the day I was born. You ask me, out of everyone you know besides you, who is the most important person to me? Without blinking, I told you it was you, no question about it." Suddenly, it was as if a ton of bricks fell on my head. She began to cry. "I'm sorry, Dad. After Barry, you're the most important person in the world to me, and I've been treating you as if that wasn't true. But it's not only that. Barry also asked me who I wanted to walk me down the aisle. You already knew the answer to that question. But you kept asking me, what's preventing that from happening? And I told you that you wouldn't be there if my uncle was there. Then, you said one word that shocked me to my core. Barry said so. It was like scales fell from my eyes." "Dad, this isn't a rehearsal or a dry run. Barry and I are actually going to get legally married today, in your backyard. You're going to walk me down the aisle and make my lifelong dream come true today, regardless of anyone else." My tears flowed freely as my little girl reminded me of how much she loved me. I would never ask them to do this, but they did anyway. I shook Barry's hand warmly. "Thank you, Barry. Now I understand why Indra chose you over all the others to share her life." He said nothing but grinned and returned the firm grip of my hand. I had to ask another question. "What about your mother's? Won't she be too upset that you're blowing up the big event by eloping instead of following the original plan?" Indra got melancholy. I was hesitant to bring her today, but a recent conversation between her and me pushed me over the edge. "We were talking about your rigidity concerning your brother. Mom was the one who convinced me to secretly connect with your brother's family 4 years ago. When Mom and I were recently discussing the possibility of you not attending my wedding, she mocked you by saying you were acting like a 2-year-old. Mom knows how strongly I feel about you walking me down the aisle, so I asked her a direct question. Do you think I should honor my uncle, Brick's family's invitation to my wedding knowing that Dad won't be there because of it?" Her answer shocked me. She said, "Of course." To clarify, I rephrased the question. asking her, "Are you telling me I should intentionally choose my uncle, Brick's family over my dad?" She shocked me again with her answer, "Your dad is the most unforgiving jerk alive. Brick is willing to forgive your dad for how he's treated his family over the years, and is eager to reconnect with him to mend the fractured relationship. But, no, not your self-righteous jerk of a son. I'm sorry, Indra, but that's exactly who he is, a jerk. I'll admit that he caught me with another man once, once. I begged and pleaded for his forgiveness, but what did he do? He divorced me. Sure, there were other men he never knew about, but he divorced me over that one time and threatened my livelihood if I didn't cooperate in the divorce. And so, yes, Indra, I'm telling you as your mother, honor Brick's family's invitation to make sure your father isn't there. Or make him grow up and become a man by mending his long-standing feud with Brick." Indra continued, "Couples elope every day for various reasons. Sure, Mom will be angry for a while, but she, as my parent, insisted that I choose one parent over the other, meaning you. That's when I realized she was manipulating me to hurt you because you divorced her. She also put a lot of effort into pairing me with your brother's family, nurtured by my grandparents on that side. Because I listened to her so closely, I almost lost my father. If that had happened, I would never have forgiven any of them, so thankfully Barry was able to open my eyes when he did. Since Mom insisted that I choose one parent over the other, that's exactly what I'm doing here today." I wiped my tears and hugged her. I was extremely proud of this fine pair for their maturity and insight. Then I realized something. "You said the photographer was coming? I hope you're not too disappointed, honey, but I returned my tuxedo a couple of weeks ago. I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle even in my underwear, but I'm afraid I won't look good in the photos." Irina cleared her throat, grinned, and winked. "In a moment of inspiration, I happened to be walking by a rental place a couple of days ago, and they happened to have that tuxedo for rent. It's hanging in the coat closet, between two of his winter coats. It was lucky, wasn't it?" she added slyly. "So you knew and didn't say anything?" I asked, surprised. "I just kept it secret for good reason," she added, "and this seems like a great reason." While I was getting dressed in the tuxedo, the photographer and videographer arrived and were scoping out the terrain for the impromptu wedding setup. They took photos of Barry and Indra to save time, because they had another wedding to get to later that day. We had the ceremony with no wedding director. Irina played a CD of the medley of songs that Indra had provided her with on our stereo. The whole event took less than 30 minutes. The Reverend was very eloquent and knowledgeable. I had never been more proud in my life to walk such a short distance with my daughter. The photographer and videographer snapped and recorded tons of photos and videos, documenting every second of the activity. Indra brought the top tier of their wedding cake to do the cake cutting ceremony and share the remaining portions of the cake with us. No one else was there, just Indra and Barry, Irina and me, the Reverend, the photographer and videographer, a total of 7 people versus the 175 or so who had been officially invited. When it came time for the witnesses to sign the marriage certificate, the newlyweds asked for Irina and me to officiate. We were thrilled. Indra put on a different CD so she and her new husband could have their first official dance together. Of course, the obligatory father-daughter dance followed that while Barry whirled the Irina around the backyard. It was perfect. After the Reverend, photographer, and videographer left, Irina invited the newlyweds into our house, where she had prepared a virtual feast of everyone's favorite foods. I was amazed at how she had covered her tracks from me. Maybe this particular lady had more to her than I had thought. After the wonderful meal with just the 4 of us, I had to ask, "What about the original wedding plans and your honeymoon?" Barry spoke for the pair. "We just took an additional 10% surcharge to move all our flights, accommodations, and honeymoon reservations up to start tonight instead of 2 weeks from now. After we get changed here, if you will drop us off at the airport, we'll be flying to the Maldives for a week-long honeymoon. We both have had work-related cover stories and informed everyone who needed to know, which conveniently explains our absence and non-presence in town this week. In everyone's minds, the wedding is still happening in 2 weeks. Wait a minute, Barry." I took out my wallet, pulled out my credit card, and handed it to him. "Barry, I've been believing you to be a great son-in-law. If you want to be upgraded to a great son-in-law, I want you to do me a small favor." "What is that, sir?" he asked. "I'm asking you to use this credit card to cover the surcharges incurred on this card. Second, I want you to charge no less than $2,500 on this card for whatever you two want to spend while you're there. I don't care how you spend it. That's up to you two. Remember, no less than that. You can spend more, but not less. Do you understand? I emphasized. Yes, sir, he replied as they both hugged me in thanks for the unexpected gift. One more thing, I added. I could easily afford to pay for the entire wedding, but your mother insisted on paying half probably so she could be in control. If she gives you grief because you were cheated out of half of the wedding expenses, I'll happily write her a check to allow you to reimburse her for every penny. Thank you, Dad. Barry and I might take you up on that generous offer. As for today, I have no regrets. This was my perfect wedding day. I must have hugged her for 5 minutes before letting go to get dressed. 2 weeks later, Indra and Barry Dotson showed up on time for their originally scheduled wedding ceremony in their street clothes. No one was surprised when I wasn't present. Hello, everyone. To all our friends and family, Barry and I want to express our sincerest thanks to each and every one of you for joining us today to celebrate our wedding. You may not know, but Barry and I are already married. We eloped 2 weeks ago and had a private ceremony. But that doesn't negate the reason we wanted to share with all of you in a celebration of our happy wedding day. So, if everyone here agrees, we'd like to proceed with the wedding reception. Let's get this party started, she shouted. Lots of cheers and yells came from the crowd as the DJ took over the party. Of course, there was no official photographer present. A dozen disposable cameras were strategically placed throughout the reception hall for guests to use to help them capture the memories of the event. Indra's mother, Joanne, was actually extremely angry at her daughter for ruining her planned event, but tried not to show it in front of all the other guests. Brooke, Fiona, and their 3 children, Donna, Clay, and Lisa, were extremely disappointed, along with my parents, that they would not have official roles in the wedding, other than celebrating their marriage and the long-awaited family reunion of estranged siblings, as they had so eagerly anticipated. Amber, Ramina's daughter, shared some unsolicited information that she had overheard from Indra. Shona must have learned her lesson after she lost you. She's been adamant about never straying again, and has stayed with your brother all these years to raise their family, even though it's not the family she initially planned to raise. I didn't miss the irony of that situation, although I thought I would never do this. In a weak moment, I got down on one knee while we were on vacation at the beach with the sun hanging low in the picturesque horizon. It was such a scenic view. Irina McMasters, will you please change your last name to Whitcomb? I was genuinely unsure if she was ready to change it or not, but she had been such a blessing in my life, I felt compelled to profess my feelings one more time. She said, yes. My life after that was a series of peaceful days with Irina and Indra. Indra gave Barry a daughter, named Chloe, and we saw them often to help care for her. I stayed in touch with my parents, but at a safe distance. Brick and Fiona vanished from my life, and I didn't regret it. Years passed, and I learned to accept the past, forgive those who had hurt me, and focus on the present. The love between Irina and me grew stronger every day, and Indra became a wonderful woman and mother of 2. I knew I made mistakes by trying to control my life and the people around me too much. In the end, I learned that forgiveness was necessary for freedom and happiness. My love affair with Fiona ended tragically, but it taught me valuable lessons about trust, forgiveness, and the power of family love.